It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking some time out today. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
No, no, it's great to be here and just to chat with you. I think we're going to have a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. So let's begin our conversation with 5 years ago. This pandemic really changed so many things for all of us. Just everything was rearranged. How did you ultimately make it through the global pandemic, and how has it influenced and radiated into your work today?
Mm. Yeah, so that was such a strange time for all of us that it really just took us out of everything that we knew and identified with and how we made sense of the world and opened a lot of eyes. I was actually living abroad at the time, so we were overseas in Taiwan, which is just this, tiny island off the coast of mainland China. And when it happened, the virus first, made its appearance through Hong Kong, and after SARS and all of that, the Taiwanese government was just like, no, we're not doing this again. So they shut the borders pretty quickly, and everyone was, masked up, and I was like, what is going on? Like really? Like this seems like a stretch. And my parents were like, you guys should really just come back to the States. You don't want to be like exposed while you're so close. And we were like, well, let's just see what happens. And, fast forward a year and my parents were like, no, stay in Taiwan. Like,
Right.
like things are actually more stable there. And so it was very bizarre because I was living in Taiwan where my parents originally were from. They immigrated to Texas in the 80s. And my husband and I had moved back just 2 years prior because we had both lived overseas for a time, and my son was quite young before he wasn't in school yet. So we were like, well, this is a good opportunity while we're working remotely to just, you know, explore a little bit more, expose my son to, a different cultures, boost his language abilities. And then we did not expect to stay in Taiwan for as long as we did. But the pandemic really just completely isolated us from our families because we couldn't travel. And so in that time, I think emotionally and mentally, I needed some kind of refuge. And so I started looking around for sources of support and community that I could tap into locally. And one of them was a painting studio that was close to where I was taking Mandarin lessons. And I had always enjoyed art to a certain extent and the creative arts. I wrote plays in college. I did some dancing. I always enjoyed sketching, but it was more of a hobby. And the pandemic, where I was at home with my son and then starting to take painting lessons, it allowed me to dedicate a lot more time to the practice. And my son was also around 4 years old at the time, and he was starting to ask, like this whole shift in the way that we were organizing our lives, caused him to ask a bunch of questions, which, for someone like me, I mean, I wasn't really prepared to explain what was going on. To him, and so it became kind of this combination of exploration into philosophy, into how different cultures and religions can explain such a cultural upheaval and societal upheaval, along with the visual aspect of combining it with painting so that when I started a regular practice called the Oxford Boy. I was combining painting with philosophical conversations and dialogue, and it became basically this web comic And all of this kind of emerged from the crucible of the pandemic
Yeah.
and being at home with my son and also exploring this new avenue of creativity. And so it all came together kind of very strangely and organically, all at the same time.
What a wonderful confluence of everything, of being, the creativity, the vocation, the parenting, capturing that time and doing it in a healthy way. It just seems like what a wonderful birth of something, you know?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it was it's something that I mean if you just took it apart and took it piece by piece, like the work wouldn't have happened the
yeah.
way it did. And so it was really interesting to just watch it develop um and just let it go where it seemed to want to go and need to go. And now that things have settled down a little bit, I'm kind of at a point in which it's like, okay, like where should it go next, and where should I let it take me next? Which is a very different feeling because in the pressures of everything coming together during the pandemic, I felt like it found its own way. But now that there's more expansiveness and more time, I'm kind of at a loss. Like, it's the way the path isn't entirely clear now that actually like there's more breathing room, and it's kind of it's interesting. Now I'm kind of more at a crossroads where I have more time to reflect and think and consider where to go next with the work. So I don't know, stay tuned, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the interesting parallel to what we're living through now that we lived through during the pandemic is that things are still heavy in a very different way right now. You
Hmm.
know, I
Yeah.
feel that when the administrations changed during that pivotal time in 2020 into 21, I think we all had the chance to breathe. But since January, that whole feeling of what we were going through, of
Mm-hmm.
political instability and absolute chaos in DC has kind of become something that I think is the Bob Dylan moment for all of us, where no matter
Mm-hmm.
where you look, there's going to be a theme that you can grab onto that will have
Yeah.
some level of both social and philosophical importance because we are living through heavy times, kind of akin to COVID, not like COVID, but
Mm-hmm.
there's still this heaviness in the American air.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And I think that whereas with the pandemic, it seemed like there was a more directed threat in the air. Like, it was a lot clearer what we were battling with. The approaches that everyone felt like were the best way to confront the pandemic obviously were different, and people had different opinions about how to best address and support people through that time period were different, but at least, COVID itself was the boogeyman, right?
Yep.
And now I think you're right in that it's even more chaotic because now it's like depending on who you ask, the boogeyman is completely different,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so it's even muddier and I mean, as difficult as it was to rally behind COVID, I mean, even now it's even more scattered
Uh-huh.
and it does make things far more difficult to navigate. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think, and I think I mean, I see different approaches just talking with my friends. Or it's like some people just want to lay low, they just want to keep their head down, they just want to get through their day. And then some people are completely, they have the fire in their bellies and they want to be loud and they want to fight. And yeah, it's like, it's hard to say what's the right approach.
Yeah, right.
And everyone has their reasons and everyone has to do what they think is the appropriate thing to do. And yeah, everyone just has to figure out what they what is the right thing to do and what is aligned with their values. So
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
I get
it's
it.
it's an interesting time for
Yeah,
sure.
it certainly is. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do right now in 2025. I'm going
Okay.
to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, 12, let's say they're 12 years old. It's career day. And one of the kids is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer him?
So I basically draw pictures and tell stories.
Okay.
Yeah. I draw pictures that are inspired by ancient Chinese brush painting, and so the three key words are ancient. It's like thousands of years old. Chinese, in that it originated in what is now modern day China. And it's painting, and you use a paintbrush to do it, except I actually do it on the iPad now. And so I've been able to transform the art form from using traditional materials into a digital platform. So it makes things a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to make changes, and you don't have to watch paint dry, basically.
Right.
And then the telling stories part is basically I read a lot of books on ancient Chinese philosophies. So that would be Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and some of the stories and the lessons that they share become inspiration for conversations, characters that then appear in my books for both adults and children.
So what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
Uh, that's the thing. I don't think I ever went to a career fair where or heard anybody talk about their job and was just like, oh yeah, that's it for me. When I was 12, let's see, I would have been seventh grade. Yeah, I probably I probably just wanted to sing. I don't know, but I don't
Yeah.
know that I would have wanted to be a singer. Like those are two different, very different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like doing something for fun versus doing something as a profession, right? Um, but I think that writing has always been a source of joy for me. One of like some of my most admired characters came from books. So I grew up on Little Women, on Anne of Green Gables, and the characters in them, Joe March and Anne Shirley, they were both writers and poets in their own right, even though they were growing up in a time in which those opportunities were not necessarily available to them or not easy to achieve. And and so yeah, I guess like yeah, if you had to ask me when I was 12, I would probably say, yeah, just like singing and writing would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
who were kind of inspirations that you looked up to in books as authors or even illustrators or artists? Who were inspirational and seminal in your development of your personal way of doing it and painting and writing? Was there
hmm
anybody that really sticks out?
Yeah, so there's one writer and illustrator who's Taiwanese. His name is Jimmy Liao, and he's like Andy Warhol of Taiwan, except his in Taiwan, it's interesting. Like when I moved there, I didn't realize just how much illustration and the visual arts was integrated into their society. And I think part of it probably stemmed from Taiwan being under Japanese occupation for 50 years. And so a lot of the manga traditions and things like that really melded into kind of the psyche of the youth back then and continued on just based on geographic proximity. But Jimmy's work, I mean, there are aspects of Taiwanese culture in which you would not expect illustration to play such a big part. Like every month when we got our electric bill, the envelope with the bill inside was like decorated with a different artist's like illustration that month. And it's just like compared to the US where it's just like you get an electric bill and it's just like this really like corporate,
Yep.
sterile, like blue text, on a gray envelope. And so it's like aspects like that where there were always like public installations and murals and things like that all around you. Where it seemed like the visual arts was, just this very integrated part of daily life. And Jimmy Liao, who as an author and illustrator is just such an icon in that space, um, his characters and his books have been transformed into sculptures in different subway stations. Actually, like one light rail station in Taipei actually just has like all of his sculptures, like they're on the trains themselves,
Wow.
or like they're painted on the train cars, and things like that. And his books are like they could be like 100 pages of just no text, just visuals. And they're meant for adults to just flip through and read, and kind of formulate their own narratives sometimes, like very little comparatively, like just so few text. And they touch often on rather dark subjects like divorce or loneliness, isolation, um, children growing up too fast because of trauma or experiences that they didn't expect to face at that age. He talks about handicaps. So it's like some books are just like completely from the perspective of a blind girl. It's like, how do you draw and illustrate a 100-page book from the perspective of a blind girl? It's like things like that where his work has just broken down so many of the traditional barriers that you might expect of illustrated works. And I don't presume to be of that style, but there's something about that feeling in which I hope my work can just allow people to have this space to think about something that they otherwise wouldn't. And so yeah, I would say that Jimmy Liao's work has just been such a monument to the kind of work that I hope to be able to dive into someday.
So, how do you balance this line between your work and taking care of your own soul? What's your philosophy on work-life balance?
Mm, yeah, so I would say that when working, there's a part of it that is separate in a sense, that the part of work that is about sales is I have to compartmentalize a little bit from the creativity side of things. So that requires some balance in which I think like being an artist who is working to I don't know, basically sing for my supper, I guess. Uh, there's a certain aspect of inviting more people and more systems and organizations into the creativity part. I mean, I have to be prepared to compromise on my original vision or to invite changes that I otherwise wouldn't make if I could do it on my own, right?
Yeah.
And so that part of work I have to balance with exactly what I intend to convey as a creative artist. But as far as the creativity part of work goes, um, I find that it is very integrated with my life, such that it's not so much a balancing act as it is sort of a dance, I think, where one really can't survive without the other. I think that working on a project like The Oxford Boy or Big Enough, so much of that stemmed from my relationship with my son, that it couldn't have happened any other way. And to be able to work on something that is so intricately connected with my personal life is, I think it's rare. But I think I'm really lucky to be able to do that. And and part of it is also just recognizing that life is the fuel for art for me. It's not the other way around. I think that for me, life can go on um, without art, but art can't go on without my life to kind of feed it information, feed it inspiration. And so sometimes I do have to remind myself, when I'm working on something on the creative side to actually stop and engage with life, to actually like spend maybe an hour pretending I'm in a space capsule with my son, because that is sometimes gonna fuel, the ideas and the creativity that ultimately will drive my artistic practice too. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and you ran into the 18-year-old version of you, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you give that young version of you?
Um, hmm, 18. I would say, well, okay, so like when I was 18, so yeah, like just to provide context of who I was as an 18-year-old, so this advice makes a little more sense. When I was 18, I had been in a very like competitive, high-performing academic high school. And all of my friends were like on the pre-med, pre-dental engineering track. And I was at a complete loss as to what I would, do for like do with my life, your major in for college or whatever. And so, at that time, I was feeling a lot of stress, and I ended up applying to colleges with a business major in mind. And so I would tell that 18-year-old, it's okay to not know what you're going to do. It's okay to not have a clear vision or a clear idea or even a clear passion. I mean, I think that I would just tell the 18-year-old version of myself to just see one thing through at a time, and not worry about the rest, because you never know where ultimately you're gonna gather the experiences, the lessons, the knowledge from, and when it's going to come back to help you later on. And so instead of trying to get one thing right once, just try different things and see where it takes you and not worry about the rest. Um, because in the end, I guess we all figure it out or make peace with what we ultimately decide to do, and worrying about it in the moment doesn't help.
Yeah, certainly doesn't. So, of everything that you've done, accomplished, and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Um, hmm. I guess one thing that I'm really surprised but and just really happy about is um, as as an Asian American, I was born in Texas and grew up there. Um, to have found a way to tap into my Taiwanese-American heritage is something that I didn't expect my life to take. I consider myself pretty American culturally, and so when I went to Taiwan and started taking painting lessons, my art teacher was actually just like, you're never going to be like this great Chinese artist because you're just too American. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. Um, and I grew up in the 90s, everyone was getting participation trophies. And to have my teacher like say that to me was in a sense like kind of discouraging and demoralizing, and I didn't find it very encouraging at all. But in the end, he did say, he was like, but you could use your Americanness to take this really old Chinese tradition and make it your own. And so I think that to have had the opportunity to take something that has had such a long history and such a long tradition, and maybe a very strict one as a craft, and to be able to evolve it into a different space, and be part of constructing a bridge from that past to a more modern audience, has been a really cool thing to be able to do. And so I think that's something that was unexpected, but that I am proud to have been able to do. It's a privilege, I think, to
Yeah.
have that opportunity.
So the most important thing, how can people get your books? How can they see your work? How can they reach out? Any of the good business, where do they go?
Um, they can find me on oxherdboy.org, and there you can find all of the books. You can find different perks like coloring sheets and blog posts about my experiences and videos and things like that. So it's just a great place to dive in and explore.
Excellent, Regina. This has been great. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your work. I appreciate it. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the Great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.